We are having Brian on today again. Brian White, I know that the only reason that you want to see him is because the two of us together have made you laugh once or twice. Individually, I never make you laugh, but for some reason, when I get Brian on, there's more laughter. And today, I'm specifically bringing him on because he made a ridiculous assumption about the third quarter numbers with regard to Tesla vehicle sales. And I was like, what are you even talking about, Brian? Now, he did have a lot of parentheses. He did parentheticalize himself. He said, I might be wrong a number of times, and I'm assuming that he'll be right about that at least. Brian?
So I can tell you why people laugh. They told me in the comments we remind them of Statler and Waldorf from The Muppet Show.
And which is which?
Right? Well, it doesn't matter. It's the two old guys in the balcony either way.
Yeah, yeah.
So the numbers, it's very early in the quarter. There are other prognosticators who love to come out with their numbers this early. And I've looked at them in the past and said, these are just not based in reality. And a lot of times I wait until very late in the quarter to do my numbers. And I figured I will do them throughout the quarter instead. And I am still disagreeing with the other folks, but I think to the upside. Yeah. And you think I'm off to the downside. So
well, so and so everybody knows this last round, the second quarter, I think you got the closest of anybody, or darn near the closest of anybody on production. And
I was among the closest on production. There was one guy closer, but his numbers are not mathed out. They're more of a guesstimate. Yeah. And so if you don't show your math, I don't know how you got there. And on deliveries, I was within 0.7%.
But you
so
weren't close, but you weren't as close as who?
On what?
On deliveries.
Oracle Investments got closer on production.
Oh, no, on production. Yeah, and who
on
got
production,
closer? And who got
and
closer?
on deliveries, I was closer, I think, than anybody.
No.
Oh, you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, did you show your math? So
I
it
did.
counts?
I always.
Oh, then it counts. Then it counts.
I was at 460.
What was the final number?
466.
Oh, I was at on deliveries. I was at
Yes.
469, 420. I beat you.
Oh, well, that's true. You were. Oh, yeah. I was thinking. Okay. I did it wrong. I was thinking in terms of overs and unders, I suppose, as opposed to...
Oh, you were doing Price's Right rules by which, yeah, you won. You won. Come on down.
All right, so you won.
So let's look at my numbers. What are you seeing that you don't like?
Well, let's see. I think... Well, so one of your big assumptions is that there's going to be a reduction in overall production this quarter because of the ramp of the new Highland in at least one, if not both facilities, in Fremont and or Shanghai. Shanghai for sure, and Fremont for maybe, or I can't remember which way.
It is both that I believe there will be some downtime for retooling based on that. And any amount, even a week of retooling, you then have to get the ramp back up. When we saw the factories close down temporarily in the past for mandated shutdowns by government order, it took time to get back to full speed. So even if they like brought in a dream team who could switch over the line in 48 hours, it would still take weeks to get back up to where they were, and those weeks would have to be offset by additional production on top of it for the rest of that time. And I think we will still see slightly lower numbers for Model 3 in Shanghai and Fremont if the Highland changeover comes this quarter, which it may. And I think it'll come this quarter, but probably towards the end of it.
Oh, towards the end. Okay.
And then we've got Model Y.
Yes, this is,
we know
course, this is where
in
I was
Texas.
most concerned, yes.
Yeah. In Texas, Model Y, they have ended the third line. Now, there's some confusion there. They say, oh, well, it's just going to reduce output. And all those
line?
people...
Oh, you don't mean the third line.
Third shift.
Third shift.
Yes. Whatever I said, I meant third shift.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
The third shift has been closed. So, apparently. And those workers have been, the rumor is, moved to the Cybertruck line. I don't know how true that is. I imagine many, if not most of them, will be moving over to lines 2 and 3 of the Model Y to get those going. Those will start ramping this quarter. This could be the big upside surprise. Yeah, you're losing a third of your production, but if you're starting 2 new lines, they only have to get up to, 20% each would beat that number.
Yeah.
And if they get to 25, 30% capacity each, even for the whole quarter, the Model Y would exceed what it was in Q2. Any man hours spent on the Cybertruck line is likely to not yield results this quarter.
Right.
We may see a few thousand,
Right.
but we could see a whole field of them built. They're not counted until they're saleable.
Right.
So when you saw production building up in Shanghai in Q4 of 19, the parking lot was full of cars. And some even went to employees, but the only production that was counted was production of saleable units. And most of them were listed as non-saleable. And we see that in Berlin, when they were building Model Ys that were not yet saleable, they weren't counted as production because they were test or calibration vehicles. I would point out that my guesses on these things have been historically pretty accurate. A lot of people were saying, oh, in Berlin, they're going to scrap every single one of those 2,000 cars they built because they're not saleable. The factory is not certified to make saleable cars. To which I said, you're insane. They're not going to scrap $100 million of inventory. That doesn't make any sense. And lo and behold, they sold them. You just have to get the certificate before you actually push them out the door. So those are my numbers on those. Yes.
All right. And then when we get over to Berlin, is there a similar problem in terms of needing to slow down production in Berlin, or will they be able to go flat out in Berlin?
Berlin should be good. Berlin should be fine. I don't have it in front of me, and if I pull it up, it'll break the recording. So in Berlin, so right now, Texas in the last week or two was taken offline briefly for line upgrades on Model Y. That line upgrade shutdown happened in Berlin like a year ago, at least 8 months ago, but I think it was more like a year. I think it was right before Herbert Diess was cut loose. So they know how to do it, and they know how to do it quickly. It was only offline for a few days. It came back just as expected and slightly more efficient. So I think we're going to see that's already done. The only thing we've got going on in Berlin is the addition of lines 2 and 3. That's upside. So I think we'll see upside there. And that's the one place I'm confident we'll see better numbers.
So you're basically, if I remember your presentation. By the way, folks, you can go back and look at his presentation. It's certainly
who knows?
available.
It's probably up on the screen at various points during this recording.
Yeah, could be as well. So there's I think basically you're saying there's like 5,000 less here, 5,000 less there, a couple thousand less here and there. And then Berlin maybe picks up a little bit of that. And some of that is a little bit rough. And so the number isn't going to be down much. The total production will not be down much.
No.
If at all. And it could even be up a little. Mm-hmm. But, so the 480, is that where we ended up for, roughly 480?
Well, yes, last quarter, 479, 700, I think.
Something like that. So let's just call it 480 to make it easy. And so the 480, you're saying maybe it might come in at 470? Is that kind of a number?
Yeah, it would come in. The most pessimistic assumption would require the Model 3 line coming down for a prolonged period of time. Mm-hmm. And I don't see them doing that. What I see them doing is, if there's any uncertainty in how long it will take to change over the line, both Shanghai and Fremont have 2 lines of Model 3. They would do them one at a time and continue manufacturing the existing one. So my numbers assume only half of the line goes down at a time while the other's ramping. So if there's any complication, the original line can still run at full speed and honestly slightly above full speed because any redundancies in the second line would just be passed over to the first line. If a robot goes down, they've got, a spare, so to speak. And they would, they would have enough parts on hand. They would have enough everything on hand to keep that line running at 100%, which to us would appear to be 110, 115%. So the second line, while the first one's being retooled, would still be running. So even in the most pessimistic, we're still looking at same quarter growth from last year, which was very good to begin with, something like 28 to 35% higher than it was for the same quarter last year in a worst case scenario.
And of course, in a best case scenario, it could actually be slightly higher than the second quarter in your analysis. And I would, of course, just be a few thousand ahead of you. I'm saying a minimum of 500,000 produced. And I'll show you my numbers someday. Not ready to show you my numbers yet. And then wait a minute. And then I know you haven't even talked about shipments yet, but we could dip into inventory if this was the case. We could be pulling from this increasing inventory in the third quarter. So we could actually be looking at 500,000 or more sold.
Despite
yes.
Yes, because the days of inventory is currently at something like 15 or 16 days. That's a lot of cars.
Yeah.
Even to peel 2 days back of that, you're talking about a whole heap of vehicles.
Right.
So, and if those lines take longer to come back up, that's fine. We'll just chew through the existing inventory while we're doing it. And it'll be beautiful. The nice thing on demand is they change the free color to silver or gray, whatever we're calling it. There are people who really like that color who are now more motivated to purchase than before. It's a backdoor price cut, one they can easily undo in the future to go to a different color. But this is also nice because it prevents parking lots from being completely filled with one color. When black was the free color for the Model 3, black was everywhere. They kept changing it to keep it fresh. I'd like to see them add more colors. That's another demand lever. In Germany, the Midnight Silver and the Quicksilver and the Midnight Cherry Red have sold very well. If you look at the drone footage, you'll see a lot of those cars moving out because they're beautiful and people want them, and they will pay that extra $2,000-$3,000 for it.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's just a good system that just kind of works. So we will see some of that for sure.
So very, very cool. So this is, I would say this is, even though I have a slightly higher number than you, still the number of shipments, which is what I'm interested in production, but I'm also interested in how many sell through. And I'm of course still believing that there's some way to get to 2 million total for this year, and I was originally at 2.1 million. So getting to 2.1 million would be, if you're right and this is all they make in this quarter, they would have to make a lot of cars in the fourth quarter to get to 2.1. But if the Model 3 is making more.
Well, I crunched some numbers earlier today,
Yes.
and what I looked at is first half production, 920,508.
Okay.
So to get to 1.8 million, they only need 4,800 cars a day.
Yeah.
But to get to 2 million, they need 5,800 cars a day, an extra 1,000 cars a day. That's a lot of cars, Randy.
I know, but they're ramping up the Ys in 2 factories. So
So that would be 5,866 cars a day they need to build. That is an entire shipload of cars every day.
Good for them. I'm so glad they're going to do it.
It's not impossible. 2 million is not impossible. If the Highland works as expected, if execution comes out as in the best possible light, 2 million's absolutely doable.
All right, and I've got my last question. I almost forgot to ask it. It was so important, and I'm hoping people stayed to hear it. Do you think there's any hitting the brakes? Is there any possibility that if there was a lot of demand right now, and when I say there's a lot of demand, I mean, adding all these cars compared to last year is not an easy task. So I don't look at it as a demand failure. I look at it as man, that's a lot of work to get this many more cars out the door. Do you think they've applied the brakes at all in terms of these ramps, in terms of these changes, because there wasn't quite as much demand in this tough year.
I gotcha. We've seen other manufacturers pump the brakes because if they kept going full steam, they'd have too many cars in inventory. I have not seen any evidence of Tesla doing that. The closest thing to a claim I've seen was temporary workers were let go from Giga Berlin.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any indication that that means they're producing fewer vehicles. If you look at the quarterly numbers, it appears they produced a record number of vehicles. So no, I have not seen any reason to think. And with the margins they have, why would you stop? Why would you stop? I'd rather have, 10 points margin on more vehicles than, 18 points on half as many.
Right.
It just makes sense.
All right. Well, that was my last question of today. Brian, as always, it's been monstrously fun having you on, even if we've been now compared to some odd characters.
Muppets.
Some odd Muppets. So come back anytime, and I'll be seeing you over on your channel. In fact, both of us will be on each other's channel coming up this Saturday. It will be quite the event. So those of you who haven't hit notify on his channel and hit notify on my channel, you're probably going to be notified because we're going to do this back-to-back event on Saturday morning where we're going to have a debate without being in the same how would you had a name for it?
Well, I called it just a crossover episode.
A crossover.
Yeah,
a sequential debate.
Yes, a non-linear debate.
Yes, we figured that if we
linear
were actually debating it face to face, that food could be flying and who knows what might happen. So
tempers would flare.
Who knows? So watch out for this show that's coming up Saturday morning, and then follow My Tesla Weekend everywhere. Follow me, follow us all. And Brian, it's been wonderful. See you soon.
It's always a treat, Randy. I enjoy it. You're a lot of fun.
All right. And for all of those of you who are watching, as always, it's been great talking to you.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.